yeah, we got to overturn.
You're listening to the E-Men, inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. You may call it tardy, I call it fashionably late. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 286 of the Mike the New Haven podcast. It's reunion time, and it's not like the Real Housewives reunions. This is actually a lot calmer, a lot more civil, and a lot more fun. And this is pure reality here, not scripted like those shows are. For this episode 286. I'll tell you why momentarily, but if you haven't checked out the previous episode 285, that was volume 39, actually, of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit with Vinny Manco. Now, Vinny was in first 6 truck, then, of course, 10 truck for 9 years there, and later went out to JTTF in 2008. Where he served until 2021. Interesting guy. Glad I could speak with him. Really varied career. 27 years in total with the NYPD, 9 of them in emergency. So check out that episode if you haven't already. And by the way, like I said, I wanted to use the transit cops intro. Part of me was thinking about it. But again, since we monetize, we'll lose the money and I will cry my eyes out. So we couldn't. But it's there in spirit. Nevertheless, a couple sponsors to run through. First things first. Like I said, hey, I got a consulting company. Check it out. Need advice on how to start your podcast? Frustrated with the editing process? Can't find a voiceover guy? Hi, I'm Mike Colón, and I'm here to help. I'm the owner and founder of MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company for all things media, where I can offer you consulting advice on how to get started, and once you get started, editing, as well as voiceover work, all for a very reasonable price. If you want to reach me, you can contact me at 917-781-6189 or the email that you see listed here. I'm always available, and I'm always willing to help. Again, 917-781-6189. Why go to some giant consulting firm that's going to charge you an arm and a leg when you can just come to me? If you want to be stress-free, the way to go is to call MC. MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company. Now, for those of you who are watching that on LinkedIn and YouTube, if you happen to be disgusted by the fact I'm wearing a Rangers jersey, let's say you're an Islanders fan or a Devils fan, don't worry, I'll work with you too. Now for the next ad, retired 15-year NYPD veteran and current defense attorney, Joe Murray. If you're ever caught on the wrong end of the law, call Joe Murray. Joe's a retired NYPD police officer turned criminal defense attorney. With 15 years of experience in the NYPD from 1987 until 2002, he parlayed a successful career in the NYPD into an equally successful career as a criminal defense attorney. His website is jmurray-law.com, where you can reach him at 646-838-1702, or just email him at joe@jmurray-law.com. All right, thanks to Joe. Well, one of my guests on the panel tonight suggested that I may not survive the show, and she's right, but nevertheless, we're going to have some fun tonight. Well, one of the great things about this miniseries, the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, is in addition to the great E-Cops we've profiled who served exclusively in the NYPD Emergency Service Unit, didn't have any experience in any departments prior, that's all part of this miniseries, and it's great. We've also been able to profile people from the New York City Housing Police Emergency Rescue Unit, and tonight, of course, the New York City Transit Police Emergency Medical Rescue Unit. Now, the people on the panel tonight are all returning guests. They've been on the show before. It's a transit rescue reunion show from the folks who've served in EMRU over the years and later came over with the MERS. So we welcome back to the show tonight John Busching, Ken Schnetzler, and Anita Rosato. Folks, good to have you. Ken from the car, Anita from Florida, John from Long Island. Thanks for being here this evening.
Hey. Hey, Kenny.
Hey, how you doing, Anita?
Good, love. How are you?
Good.
Nice.
Feel like I'm back.
Really?
What?
Feel like I'm
really?
What? No, I'm like quiet as a church mouse. Very hard to talk.
I feel like I'm back on patrol. I'm sitting in my car, but I'm in between going to a Boy Scout meeting for merit badge counseling. So I apologize in advance. I'll be bailing out in about maybe 20 minutes or so. But one of the things I still do. So I'm parked across from where the troop meets. So yeah, I'm back sitting in the car.
There you go. There you go. Listen, I appreciate it. I appreciate the effort. You mentioned to me earlier that you probably would be in a car. So the fact that you're even able to make the show tonight does mean a lot. So I'll start. Actually, no, I'll go to John on this one. There's getting into the unit, of course, and the opportunity opened up for you specifically in 1991. So tell me about getting into EMRU.
Took a while, but I put in for it a bunch of times, and then finally got the call that I was going. So Anita and I were both in the same um, version of STS in August of '91, and you just really had to want to do that type of work. I would say the main thing, I would think you both would agree with me, was going to man unders. Dealing with people that were hit by the trains. So you definitely had to have the right frame of mind for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's not easy. Actually, a job like that happened today. I was scrolling through Twitter or X or whatever the heck it's called now, where NYC Firewire tweeted out that person struck by the train in Queens under the train, so they're requesting a stoppage. I'm like, how ironic that we're doing a show tonight with EMRU, and a man under job just came over. Anita, I think you mentioned that weren't you driving a sergeant around at the time or something? You were driving somebody around.
I was driving to Boston District 2. I wasn't in the unit yet, and that's what intrigued me into getting into the unit. It's like I'm on the platform and you go everywhere with the boss, but not under the train. So.
All right. Well, you're the only person I know that actually wants to go. Well, of course, all three of you wants to go under it. And when you said that to me, I'm like, well, I know what show is this is going to be when you were first on. Somebody actually wants to go under there. And I think I have a picture here of John that you sent over where this is you doing training and you're under there.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We were home. Yeah. That's all I ever wanted.
Smile.
That's all I ever wanted to do. And from when I got on the job was to be in EMRU.
And I love the ball cap there. I love the vest. It's good. And of course, I can see you crunched up there underneath that. And look at this lady. I recognize her.
Yeah, how we survived that, right, John?
Considering, I don't know. I think our rope training was very basic. After from when we went from that to Rocco, it was like, oh my God, how did we not kill ourselves? But that was the two of us in the parking lot of the airport, right?
Willets Point. No, that was Willets Point. Wasn't that Willets Point?
I thought, I don't know.
The airport was something you and me did on the slide.
Exactly.
But we didn't do that.
Yeah, I guess who would have taken the picture if it was just the two of us?
There you go.
Yeah. And you both got the harnesses there, I believe. What was this? Like you were climbing down the side of a building with this photo?
No, it was Willets Point.
Oh. Yeah, it was like an overpass going from the subway to the parking lot near the old Shea Stadium.
All right. Well,
that was Joe's favorite go-to place for rappelling rope practice. Yeah, it's the overpass that you used to go from Roosevelt Avenue up the stairs and then across over to the actual train station.
As somebody that's scared of heights, that photo alone makes me kind of break out into a bit of a sweat. I don't know how you guys did that, man.
There were a few of the pictures from that day, and we used to, Joe showed us how to tie off, wrapping the rope around your legs.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and subsequent to that, learning how to lock off on the figure eight and the rack and stuff. I never saw anywhere else about the wrapping around the leg thing.
Not even for the other company that I work for. That is not what we did. We locked off the same way on the 8. And the same thing with the rack.
None of us plummeted to our death, so it must have worked.
That's the funny thing about that photo. It looks like you're hanging on for dear life, John. That was
the beginning of us learning this, where you're still you sure this is going to work?
Yeah.
Right.
Are we doing this right?
And I do recall the way we were taught then was you were on my harness. You clipped into the D-ring of my harness, not onto the rope.
Yeah.
So your weight was on my harness.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah, we learned some different techniques. Kenny, do you remember where that all came from?
What,
the rope training? Was that just something Joe had learned?
Yeah, as far as I could tell, because a bunch of us went out there one time, and we just started doing what there once was a time we didn't have belts and we used webbing, and we rigged our own
Hasty harness.
the 1-inch webbing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hasty harnesses.
Yeah. It was a little different in the earlier days there, and then I think once we finally were, I don't want to say in competition with NYPD, but when the hierarchy of transit realized the value that we brought to the table, they finally wrote some checks, and we were able to get some equipment, some decent, legitimate stuff. Not going over to tents and trails and buying 25 feet of 1-inch webbing.
No, of course. And Kenny, I don't want to gloss over how you got into the unit, because you got in 1984. Of the panel tonight, you're the one that had the most time in emergency medical rescue before the merger of 95. So I think you had about 3 years on the job total when that opportunity came up for you. So for those that did not see your episode that you did with me a little while ago, just refresh them. How did you get into the EMRU?
Back then, EMRU was part of Citywide Patrol Services, and what they would do is they would it wasn't even really a process. It was like almost who you knew. They would bring you into the unit, transfer you temporarily for like 2 weeks, and you just go out to patrol with John White, Carmine Delmonico, Joe Wilson, Larry Jackson, and a number of folks. And basically, that you had some experience. I brought obviously I was in the military. I was an EMT. I brought some of that skill set, and then they just wanted to see if you blended well with the others. And then you went back to patrol. Like I said earlier, the big class for the first time was 4 of us when four of the senior members had gotten promoted to sergeant, because there was no real movement. The unit was what it was from the beginning, and they never really expanded it until then. Again, a sergeant's promotion exam came up, and Joe and Frank Kelly, and like I say, I can't remember the other 2 that got promoted out because myself, John Coughlin, Sue Techie, and Bobby Mason had that couple of weeks of experience. They brought us in December of '84, and then we just, it was, fortunately, things evolved and things got more, I don't want to say legitimate, but more professional, more, able to go back and look at something in a manual to say, hey, this is the way we do it. We really didn't have any of that. We had a thrown together booklet on how to lift trains and the various different blocks of wood, where to put them. And then we went to the yards and we went to the museum and we did that. And that was our bread and butter. Everything else was, handling medical calls, which, again, most of us being EMTs before that wasn't a big deal. But yeah, that was, it was almost like a slow grind to finally get to the groups where, John, Anita, and so many others came in, where we actually got like an injection of, hey, new fresh blood, and we're expanding the size of the unit. So, yeah.
How big was our class, John?
I was just thinking it's probably about 15.
I think so.
If I would have guessed.
We had a big class.
Yeah.
Because I think, and then after that, the next class was Andy's class.
Right.
I don't think it was as big.
It was close. There probably added like 25 people within 2 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it had to be in that bunch, not the same class, of course. The late Andy Stromfeld, yourself, Anita, John, Anta Tukovic, and some of the other names you mentioned that later went on to ESU.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Anne was in the issue.
She was in with. Was she in? No, she wasn't in our class. She was in with Andy, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Les Leibowitz was in that class also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And how about Mason? Sorry to interrupt you, Kenny. Mike Kors says Bobby Mason and John Coughlin were my ESU STS class in January of '86. Mike Kors watching. He says hi.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
What were we saying, Kenny? My bad.
What about Dennis Healy came in? He came in with you guys, right?
He came in the class before us.
Before Dennis was there already.
He went with Winston Smith I forget who else. I forget who else it was, but yeah, I was pissed that I didn't get in with that group. But I didn't realize that I was under IED investigation for a shooting I was involved in. So you couldn't get
well, that
couldn't
could
get
be a
transferred.
possibility.
Yeah.
Wait a
Yeah.
minute. Hold on. Hold the
But
presses.
John, what?
No, you never told me, and now I'm mad at you, John. You never told me you were in a shooting when I had you on the show last year. This story didn't come up. What do you mean?
I wasn't in the EMRU. I was in the district then.
Well, tell me about that then. Hang on, we can't gloss over that. If you can.
Yeah, I mean, my partner and I, remember Rob McCallianos, Anita? Yeah.
Yep.
He and I were on patrol at 179th Street and Hillside Avenue. We heard shots fired up in the street, went up, and there was somebody firing a gun. So we gave chase. He let a round go, and then we convinced him it was in his best interest to surrender.
I like how you put that.
Without firing any shots, which the transit police were very much in favor of never discharging your firearm. So
they didn't want you out of the subway.
Yeah. So to do both, to be out of the subway and discharge a firearm, very much frowned upon. So they were.
But you also have to know how big Mike is, the guy that he was working with. Mike wasn't small.
Rob McCallianos. Rob. Yeah, Rob was also like a former bodybuilder. So
Rob was a big boy.
Yeah. There's a great video on YouTube. I have to find it. I wish I would have found it ahead of the show, where somebody must have been riding around with transit in like 92, because by this point the vehicles had changed over. And there's a purse snatcher in the area, and you can't do this now. And they did a great job. But there's like 4 guys. They hop out and they just corral the guy. And one guy just hits him with a couple of shots, a couple of really clean punches. And I'm like, my goodness. So, sometimes, even if it says transit, you're still cops at the end of the day. That's something we talked about, all 3 of you, when you guys were on my show. You're still cops at the end of the day. You got to do police work.
Yeah.
How many times the general public didn't realize that we had arrest ballots in the street? They thought when they got to the top of the stairs, they were free.
Not quite.
I was just talking about this recently. Like when I got into EMRU, I was like, oh, my arrest days are behind me. No more arrests. No more central booking. No more. Yeah. I think I was with Tommy Bender right out of the training on a midnight, and somebody came up and said their car was just stolen. So we're like, well, you got to go to the precinct. He goes, no, it's going right by. There it is. And we chased him. He ended up crashing. We cut him out of the car with the hearse tool. And they were like, I'm like, anybody want this car? He's almost dead. He's yours. So I ended up with that. My first grand larceny auto collar, and then vouchering the car. Also very common in transit to have to inventory everything from a car that you're vouchering. So it was a long thing, but I ended up making,
because there's a lot of cars on the way.
Chasing somebody for stealing a sign off of a bus. Anita,
tell that story, Anita.
You don't remember that? When I chased the guy on foot in the Bronx, we were going over the bridge, and the guy was peeling the sign off.
I have a different recollection of that.
Yeah, she had her brain still
didn't
functioning.
He have the Puerto Rican parade?
That is correct.
Puerto Rican flag on his.
And it was the Puerto Rican Day parade that day.
Correct.
And they got caught in traffic. I went over to get him, and he jumped out of the car. And I was driving and started chasing him, and left the truck running with the keys, with the machine gun in the truck. Yeah. Thankfully, one of us had their brain still working, not me, and went back and got the truck. And I just, continued my stupidity through the streets of the Bronx.
One did admonish the gentleman in a very nice way.
Yes, he was not arrested.
No.
But
Kenny, I wanted to ask you. I know you got to go soon, and I don't want to. I don't want you to be left out without telling
Kenny,
some good
you're really
stories.
freaking me out. It just looks like your head is floating. All right, I don't know if anybody else is kind of freaked out, but I'm just. You just look like a head floating in a
interior lights.
There you go. Yeah, there at least there is lighting. What's it? Besides man unders, because you can't say man unders, Kenny. And by the way, John Latanzio says hello as well. He's watching. What's the first big job that you would say you had in EMRU, Kenny?
December 26, 1984. John White and myself delivered a baby girl on the L train, 14th Street and 8th Avenue.
Oh wow.
Yep, just about a week after I got into the unit.
Sheesh.
Yeah, I think it was either number 4 or number 5 for the young lady. And we got there and water had just broke. I said, well, John, here we go. He says, oh, you got this, kid. That's okay. Together we delivered a nice little baby girl. We went back to patrol. The post cop got the picture in the paper. I think they named the kid after like his middle name or something. But that was probably the best one. Delivering a baby is always nice. Considering all the other stuff we had to see and handle over our years, delivering a baby was good.
I got to ask you too, Kenny, because I remember Jerry Kozlowski's telling me this from Housing Rescue, where because of an act of Congress, transit ended up getting MP5s. When did you guys first get the MP5s on the trucks?
I don't know, but the only thing I do know, we had to get the single fire shot ones. We couldn't even get round burst ones, I believe. So
Correct.
we had the higher capacity rounds. Obviously, having 30 round magazines was always good. Plus, the psychological factor of having a submachine gun in your hands was always good too. But they just weren't exactly the same as everybody else had. But we took what we could get.
Yeah, listen, and I gotta say, because I mean, you guys, even before getting EMRU, this was the subway during the 80s and early 90s, where, of course, even after Bratton came in and crime was able to go down 27% in transit, you're still seeing a lot of work going around. So in terms of just being in the unit during a time in which there is a lot of work going around, and as John, you pointed out, your arrest days aren't behind you, what are some of the more interesting things that you saw, not even from a criminal standpoint, but just unique standpoint, just on patrol in EMRU? You're driving through the streets and you see blank. And I'll start with, well, John, you go ahead.
Somebody hitting somebody else over the head with a 2x4 right in front of the truck. Like the truck's not big enough that says police all over it. So that was different. That was another arrest. But driving around, I remember when I first came out of STS, Kenny, you took me to see the Thanksgiving Day parades being blown up, and we got the hot pretzels from wherever they make the pretzels. So I remember that was like one of my first days out of training. That was cool.
Yeah, those were some of the unique things you got to see, whether it was back then when we were transiting, riding around in those vehicles, or present day when we, before we retired in ESU, you get some, decent perks, as we could say, maybe, where you get to see some pretty neat stuff. And then, unfortunately, sometimes it's interrupted by calls, but, there was one time I was sitting, way back before they regentrified downtown Brooklyn there, Jimmy Vargas and I think it was, we were sitting up the block from the command in front of a McDonald's. Next thing you know, it's the burglar alarm going off. We had a McBurglar. We made the collar, but thank goodness somebody from the 8-4 was looking for something, so we gave it to them. But we're sitting right there in front, so maybe the black and white transit thing didn't matter to whoever it was breaking into the McDonald's. But yeah, so that was a pretty good one.
Because you were transit and you make arrests in the street.
That's it. They probably thought we were just part of like a bus surface kind of thing,
I have a feeling. So there's somebody in the chat here, and I think he knows you, Anita, or she, because he wants me to ask you what your worst EDP job was. It's an AP. Whatever AP stands for.
On an AP tour?
I don't know. It says a user by the name of AP says, ask Anita what was her worst EDP job.
Uh-oh.
Nothing really stands out. nothing
I don't know.
really
Maybe
stands out. I mean,
AP, you got to specify, brother.
I don't know. Text back. Ask them. Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah, if you're watching, and if you know any of the panelists tonight, AP, just well, first let me know who you are, and let me know exactly what story you want to hear. Now, of course, there are the big citywide jobs where you could help out the other units, specifically, of course, emergency service, because this is long before housing rescue. They didn't come into the fold until '93. So besides the ones that everyone knows about, was there a major, maybe construction accident, collapse situation? Because like Anita, you told me, wherever there's a bridge in which a train crosses over, you guys could go. There's that transit truck again.
Yeah.
So tell me, therefore, and I guess, Kenny, I'll start with you about major jobs where, you got to help out ESU citywide.
Again, it's just, if you're moving around in the street and you come upon it or you hear it on the, on the radio, many jobs where you pull up and, it's a pin job or something. And, to be honest with you, I don't think I ever had any real problems that, what are you guys doing here? Either they pulled up, saw that we were doing it and said, you got it? Yeah. Or everybody just joined in. A number of people struck and under the train and trapped. We engaged a number of times with them, and, everything worked out in the end. They may have had their, training and their way of doing it, and we had ours, and you were able to combine to the positive outcome.
There you go. Now, that's good. That's very diplomatic. AP says in Harlem, but then again, you were in two truck for 3 years, so there's a lot of EDP jobs that you handle in Harlem.
Okay, well, first off, I actually know who AP is now, right now, because I'm actually texting with her. She's a good friend of mine.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this who I think it is?
Probably.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I don't want to say it, but I think I know who this is. Yep. I'll tell you off the air.
I made breakfast one time. I was doing midnights, and I was working with Horace Balla, and I just out of the clear blue, I just felt like making breakfast. It was a Sunday. I made breakfast. It was great. The guys were so appreciative. And a couple of months later, I get a call from, not a call. Kevin Flanagan says, Anita, I looked at and there's a name from our past. Because I looked at the schedule, Anita. You're doing a midnight on Saturday and a Sunday. You think you can make a nice breakfast again? And, okay, I can do that. So I started about 3 a.m, had all the stuff together. We get the gate entry from hell on a car. And it was a nightmare. We tried everything, just couldn't get in. Finally cleared that. I look at the watch. I go, we still have time. We can do this. So 5 o'clock, we're back, starting to do stuff. We get an EDP call, and it's only a couple of blocks from the command. And I'm like, all right, let's try to do what we can and take care of this, expedite it. So I get there and I talk to the boss and I go, what do you got? He goes, gentleman inside thinks he's God. All right, so this isn't going to be a quick job. And he's barricaded. So, okay, try talking to him, not working. I don't want to put the job over the air because then the world will show up. So trying to do it as quietly as possible. So I look at my watch. Now it's getting about the time that I figured the guys would be in. So I call the truck. We got the guy just cornered into a room. He won't come out. I'm like, so I call the truck. Kevin answers. He goes, where are you? I said, I'm 2 blocks from the command at this location. We have an EDP who thinks he's gone. And Kevin goes, that SOB is interrupting my breakfast. Hold on, I'll be right there. Kevin he shows up. The sergeant shows up. We bang a hole in the wall with the piped end of the Halligan. And we take the industrial size can of mace and just, it's bleeding out into the hallway. People are choking. put our masks on, go in. The guy is still standing up, not coughing, nothing. And we're all like, ugh. And it's game on. And then he pulls a knife, and we're starting to roll around with him. We finally get the knife. It was dogpile on the rabbit. And as soon as we get the guy in cuffs, just Kevin looks over at me and goes, "Go back to the command and make breakfast. We'll finish this." It's like, all right, I got this, bro. But yeah, that's one man you don't get between him and his food.
I don't blame him. I got a couple more. Go ahead,
Yeah, I do have to say goodbye because I have another commitment there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining, Ken, and be safe.
Yep.
Good to see
Bye,
you again.
Kenny.
Bye, Ken.
Well, twice in 1 year. I saw you in April and now.
Yeah. All righty. Stay well, everybody. Have a great Christmas and New Year's.
Yes.
Take care, Kenny. Thank you very much. We'll talk.
Bye-bye.
We will talk. We have a couple more photos here from you, John, and this is you in the REP. And I love this REP because I think you guys got this design, late 80s, these type of GMC Suburbans?
No, it was after we were in.
That was a Bratton job.
Yeah, maybe 93-ish.
Oh, so they were later. Okay.
Yeah.
And these things were clean, man. I love the design.
It was brand new. Brand new.
Yeah. So you're carrying what? Pretty much the standard tools on this thing, guys, that an EST REP would have, minus, of course, the heavy weapons. You had an MP5, of course, but, the other weapons that they would have. So it's pretty much the same.
You know what? I thought a lot of the stuff on our trucks, the smaller trucks, everything was meant to be portable because we were, in theory, bringing everything either up or down into the subway. So everything was you tried to make everything portable, either in boxes or whatever.
The unit did swell up a little bit over the years, and this was mainly, of course, during the 2 years that Brad was at the helm, and it continued up until spring of '95. I think you guys got as high as, when you first came in, how many were there? And by the time the merge happened, you guys had 50 or 60 people in the unit? If not slightly less.
If you gave me about 3 minutes, Mike, I could tell you exactly, because I was doing some cleaning and I was trying to get rid of papers, and I actually found an old EMRU roster.
Oh, all right, you're on the clock.
I'll be back.
All right, there you go. In the meantime, now, we talked about it. There's some citywide emergencies happening in the early 90s that are producing a lot of attention, if you will, on EMRU. And Joe talked about it when he was on, of course, the 93 Trade Center bombing happened. There was the Leary subway bombing in 94. So, when it comes to terrorism, I don't know how often you guys discussed it, but after 93 happened, listen, subways are a target, and EMRU is going to be on the front lines back then if something were to happen. Did they talk about it? I'm sure they did, but, were there specific discussions as to what to do, maybe training on what to do for threats of that nature?
I don't think we were as focused on terrorism back then as maybe we should have been, especially after the 93 World Trade Center bombing. I was, I got there after Joe had been there for a while, and Franco. So, we went up, helped evacuate people out of the towers and things like that. But even after that, I don't recall there being a big push towards terrorism awareness training. I also went to the firebombing with what's his name,
Leary.
Leary.
Edward Leary. Yeah.
Leary. And this is an individual thing. Very quickly, they had him within an hour of the incident. So they kind of knew quickly that it wasn't a terrorist incident, that it was a individual who had just committed the act. But you would think that it would have shined a light on the fact that these things could have been happening, and that maybe we could have been preparing a little bit more. But the unit we only had a limited amount of equipment and personnel cover the 4 boroughs where the trains were. So generally there was a truck covering south of 59th Street, and the other one Rescue 1 covered south of 59th Street. Rescue 2 covered the whole borough of Brooklyn and the entire borough of Queens. And the truck 3 covered from north of 59th Street all the way up to the top of Manhattan and the entire Bronx. So we did have specialized training for the subways and equipment, but the main thing I think that we had that we could add to a larger response, whether it be ESU or the fire department, was our familiarity with the subways themselves, the emergency exits, how to get on and off the tracks, how to turn the power on and off, how to tell if the power was on or off, the emergency shutoff for the electric, for the third rail, how to take care of that. So I think what we brought, even though there weren't a lot of us and we were very spread out, we were bringing a knowledge of the subway system to the response.
Yeah, of course.
So in when Desert Storm hit, I was in District 2. And what we had to cover within that were the substations and the tunnels. So if you had a district that, like Broadway Nassau, that was the first station coming into Manhattan from Queens, you had that platform and that tunnel. That's what you had for 8 hours. Or if you were assigned to the RMP, you sat in front of a substation. Because figuring if they could take out a substation, then you're going to cripple at least a section of the subway. So that was even before we got in the EMRU.
Yeah. I guess that was the response to potential terrorism, which was great. Standing at the entrance to a subway tunnel and it was a wait relief, so you had to wait for your relief to get there from the command. So you were generally there, and you had to wait for relief to go on meal, things like that.
I had the Cranberry Street tunnel.
Oh, 23rd and Eli.
Yes.
After rush hour, there are no people there. It's like an industrial neighborhood.
Isn't that where we almost got a complaint with Seidel?
Potentially, yes. Perhaps.
Allegedly. Statute of limitations is up.
So no laughing. Original. I'll fax you a copy.
Please do.
With everybody's name. There's 60 of us.
Wow.
Phone numbers. Yeah.
I would not.
Phone numbers and stuff. Yeah.
I didn't.
Did I spy Derek Story's name in there? I think I just saw Derek Story's name. Yeah, I'm trying to get that guy on the show. Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Well, I don't know if his number would still be good, but
yeah, I don't know if it's up to date. I mean, this was in the 90s.
This is what? How many years ago?
Yeah, almost 30. Almost 30.
Yeah.
AP is all she wanted to know, John, about when those two guys tried to blow up the Atlantic Avenue subway in 97. You were in 7 truck at the time. That's the job that Paulie Yerku and Richie Teams were from the bomb squad had with the ESU guys. Did you go to that? She's asking.
The people that relieved me ended up going. So I had done like a day tour, and the 4 to 12s ended up going.
Yeah.
So it made for some story the next day when we were going on and off duty, talking to the guys that were there, because that was crazy.
Oh yeah, that was a heavy Brooklyn presence on that job too. Because think about it, Joe and Dave, I think, are in six truck at the time, and they helped out in 7. I think they were flying at 10 that night, helping out. And Paul and Richie are in the bomb squad with their former 8 truck guys. So Brooklyn, the Brooklyn ESU trucks particularly were well represented with that job. Now, I got to say, and John, you brought this up when you were on last year. Anita, you talked about it too when I had John a couple of months ago. In that when you're going to these jobs, it's not like now where, listen, I work for a fire department, so I see the guys just punch in when they get calls, where the address is in the GPS. We have iPads in the trucks, for crying out loud, in the ambulances. You could just go right out. You had Hackstra maps, and you're covering 4 boroughs with 4 to 6 trucks, because I remember Charlie Caperna mentioning on Cops that he had 4 to 6 trucks for 4 boroughs except for Staten Island. So tell me about trying to get to these jobs, reading off the map, going lights and sirens, and dealing with New York City traffic. Anita.
I actually took a subway map, especially in areas that I wasn't familiar with, and I would write directions to the major train stations. I would literally write on the map what to take and how to get there. But if it was an off-the-wall location, then it was figuring out on the hamster map. Yeah, so it was interesting. The busiest stations you'll constantly get to. You just start learning that. Was it the Grand? What trains run along what main thoroughfares? Like what runs on the Grand Concourse? What runs on this main thoroughfare or on that main thoroughfare? But a lot of times I literally just took a map and the subway map itself and would just circle it and then just try to put directions to the side. Yeah,
that'll work. That'll do.
One of the differences between like transit and the city would just get assignments and you would go. Transit, they would give you the assignment, ask you your ETA, and then tell you what code you were going, whether you could use the lights or the lights in the siren. Yeah.
And a code 3 was with caution.
Yeah, and code 3, if you're going to use the lights and sirens,
use caution.
So the one time we were somewhere in the Bronx, and the sergeant was scratching our memo books, and we get another job like nowhere, not even in the same borough. So again, out comes the Hangster map, and they're like, "What's your ETA?" I'm like, "Stand by. I'm figuring it out." I mean, when I tell you, we were nowhere near where this was, and it wasn't like a real big, it wasn't a train derailment or something. It was somebody having a seizure in the subway. So I'm like, "Stand by." So I'm looking there. So now the communication supervisor gets on. Rescue 3, what is your ETA? I'm like, "Stand by. I'm figuring it out." Call communications forthwith. So I call communications. "You don't know your sector?"
My sector is the Bronx.
Yeah, I go, "My sector is all of Upper Manhattan and the Bronx. I'm figuring out what highways I have to go to take from where I am now to. I'm giving you complaint for not knowing your sector." So I'm like, "Well, my supervisor is here. Why don't you ask him if he knows how to get somewhere?" So that was some of the stupid stuff with transit that I didn't miss.
John, but when we worked together, a lot of times we would sit just on the other side of
Yep.
3rd Avenue Bridge or the Willis
Yep.
Avenue Bridge,
Yep.
so that we actually had a chance of getting to Bronx jobs. And we would show up. There was sometimes the cops from District 11 and 12 were like, "How did you get here?" Sitting in the middle, and John was right. Sitting in the middle like that, you had a chance of at least getting to the Bronx. Manhattan, we knew. Manhattan was just, going straight down the Hudson or the FDR.
And then we had somebody jumping off the bridge that we were sitting at the foot of the bridge. And
Yes.
Yeah. So we
Yes.
ended up, that was a good job. The only mistake on that job
was I gave the wrong bridge. You could say it.
We gave the wrong bridge. So you saw all the city ESU going to the other bridge. That was,
I forget. We were on the Willis Avenue. They were on the 3rd Avenue.
Yeah.
It was
either we were
on. Remembered it? 3 strikes, you're out of the Bronx. So that's the 3rd Avenue Bridge. We gave them the 3rd Avenue Bridge. We're on the Willis Bridge.
Yeah. But it did work out. We were able to, help out. And the guy didn't jump in the end.
Well, at least that's good.
We did the old. He was holding on to the fence. We grabbed his fingers. One of us got around and brought him in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good job.
That reminds me.
That EDP job that my friend was referring to was a jumper If you give me 1 second. Kind of hard to. There you go.
That's him?
There was a jumper in? No. This is a different job.
Oh.
This was a domestic. This is the job that my friend was referring to, AP.
Mm-hmm.
Domestic, separated from his wife, and she was refusing to allow him to see his kids. So he decides he's going to jump. And I was with Lee Elliott and Juan Garcia, the sergeant, third squad sergeant was there. We were talking with him. We were triangulating. We had guys on the side fire escapes. And then finally, we make the call to pull the guy in. Now, we were tethered because we were kind of out the window. And the protocol was to always have handcuffs, rope on the one cuff of the handcuff. So we go to pull him in as you look at the picture. And now we're on the floor and we're rolling around. The problem is, I'm running out of rope. Lee Elliott is no longer moving because he's on the bottom of the pile, twisted in all the rope. Juan Garcia is screaming, cuff the right Spanish guy. Because they were the same skin color. And finally we get the guy cuffed, and we're just pulling ourselves apart because there was rope everywhere. And Lee is just underneath me laughing and giggling. He's not moving, he's just laughing and giggling. We finally got the guy out. But that was an interesting job, and I didn't realize that picture was given to me by my brother. Because the guys that he worked with in his house knew me because I've gone to his house a couple of times. And they're like, Mario, was in this your sister? He's like, oh, yeah, it is. He actually gave it to me for a Christmas present. I was surprised. Pulled up the newspaper, got a copy of it for me. It was nice of him.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah.
I'll say. Speaking of bridges, John went through the archives and he sent me this 5-second oldie but goodie of a certain somebody climbing a bridge during STS. Short, but then again, that was what? Well, no, you got in the early 90s. So I remembered that, and looking through the archives on Transit Rescue, you guys would go up on the bridges. You would do the climbs because, again, any bridge that a train goes over, you can get a jumper job up there. So there you went. Or as a certain somebody said it a couple months ago when they were on the show about those jobs. Well, looking at you, Anita.
Yeah, I know. Well, we all know why we weren't allowed on that bridge.
Yeah, it was an incident.
Oh,
But I don't know if you remember, Anita. Dave Isaacson took video of us in STS when we went to the bridge. So
No, I did not.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm hearing of that.
So I actually found the old tape, and there you were. There you were.
All right. Well, I didn't even realize. I actually have. Do you remember the bumper sticker?
I do.
You have one?
I believe I do.
I do. Are you aware of the bumper sticker, Mike?
I am not.
Go ahead,
The pause tells it all.
All right. When we were in Transit Rescue, there was a little bit of a rivalry between Truck One in Manhattan and Transit Rescue.
And all of Transit Rescue. Only one truck.
Yeah. So, at one point, somebody from Transit Rescue had bumper stickers made up. Adam 1, Boy 1, Truck 1, cancel 91 by Transit. So that we basically handled their job and we're canceling them. And these bumper stickers went everywhere in Lower Manhattan, everywhere.
Ambulances, pizza deliveries, sanitation trucks, everywhere.
Just everywhere. There was a segment of people from ESU at the time that thought it was funny, so that they were given bumper stickers, and when they flew to one, they would put them on in one's quarters or on their truck. So it definitely it it reached a point where we were told, okay, stop.
You got to stop.
You got to stop. Like
Grow up.
the chief from SOD and transit was like, enough. I don't want to get any more phone calls. This is ridiculous. So
do you remember we just put dive stickers on our vehicles for no reason? We weren't dive certified. We put dive stickers on the vehicles. Sure enough, there's a phone call. What do they need dive equipment for? There's no bodies of water in the subway. Yeah, it was all just a play.
Except when it floods, you see.
Yes.
When we have flooding, it is needed.
But it's that civil service humor. It's that poking back and forth that most people just don't quite get.
Yeah, and then boof, you merged. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. Now go and have a great time together.
Yes.
But
just enjoy yourselves.
You were pretty funny. You were pretty funny 6 months ago. But it was just goofy. It was nothing more than that. But it was interesting listening to Joe Said's interview.
Joe Said?
Joe said. And I think in looking back, he should have, since he was like in charge of training us, he should have spent more time in the history of the unit, how it evolved and things like that. If you listen to how we were developed, very interesting. But what they originally were agreed upon and what we were at the merge was completely different.
Well, it wasn't. It was my understanding that there was a shortage of ambulances, and Mother Transit cannot have her train running late, so they formed our unit. Hence the reason why you had to have an EMT to be able to deal with patients and get them off the train to keep the system moving.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
And they were saying about the medical part, like that's how we got the name Emergency Medical Rescue. That they were like, we don't need another emergency service unit. We already have an emergency service unit. So it was interesting listening to how we started, even if you'd listened to Kenny tonight, from what we started to where we were when we merged.
Completely different than the understanding, I think, when they allowed us to be formed. So can you blame the city ESU for, being a little twisted? No, I guess not, because that wasn't the understanding when we were first. That's true.
Developed.
That's true.
Yeah.
But things changed. I mean, what did we handle it? Towards the end, we were great at man-hunters, EDPs, animal conditions.
Right. Pretty much
the little world that we have. Crowd control, moving people, talking to people. That was all us, because even prior to getting into the unit, you're doing a rush hour. It's you and another guy, and how many people on that rush hour? You had to learn how to deal with people and how to move people along.
Yep.
So
and that was something that was mentioned in the New York Times article about Transit Rescue getting formed in the fall of 1977, which it called it in the headline a roving rescue one. And it was the van that we talked about off the air, where it would go around, and if somebody was having a heart attack or any kind of a medical emergency, John, you mentioned a seizure call earlier in the subway, you go down there. But even as early as 77, and this is the interesting part of the article, and Joe and I talked about this, they not only handled a medical emergency, there was a woman who was raped in the subway. They went down there and handled that investigation too. So even then they were doing calls that weren't just strictly medical in nature. But he brought up that point, and I'm glad you mentioned it again, John, to where they couldn't call it ESU. They had to call it EMRU. And that led to the infamous nickname that Joe Ocasio told me about when he was on, which is they used to call you guys what? Nurses with guns?
Transit EMS on the air.
Yes.
Another one.
Yeah,
but
famous one.
Yeah, let me tell you, I was Anita and I were both in EMRU or Transit Rescue when we merged for 4 years ish, somewhere in there,
Yeah,
a little bit more.
91 and 95 was the merge.
Yeah, and we had a blast. The people in that unit were really just second to none. We had such a good time. You had to, like the world is your oyster, so to speak. We were covering such huge areas, and then even if it wasn't your area, you had to back up the other truck.
Right, because what did we really put out on a 2 to 10? Was 2 trucks. You had Manhattan and the Bronx, you had Queens and Brooklyn. So if it was a heavy job, you were either backing them up or you were covering their area. So you learned how to do a lot with a little bit of manpower, and it just taught you to think on your feet. It was a dynamic way of doing a job. It was addressing what came up at that time with what you had and the personnel you had. And in transit, man, you're waiting to hear those keys jingle. That's what you're waiting for. When you got somebody and wrestling with them, because we always had keys, and you'd be wrestling with somebody. You knew cops were coming when you heard the keys. You heard the feet, but you heard the keys ringing.
Yeah, we had a good time. I mean, the career opportunities in the NYPD were just boundless because it was so big. The amount of equipment that they had, the freedom to do your job was much more in the city than it was in transit. Transit was very controlling towards
the end,
how they wanted things done. Basically, all they wanted was you to keep the trains running.
Correct. That was it. Homicide on the subway, 5 o'clock. You better have it cleaned up because the trains are coming. Stop.
Hi, Kitty. Who's making her second appearance on the Mike the New Haven podcast. Scott,
It's 8 o'clock and I'm supposed to be in bed, okay?
You're good. Scott is in the chat. He was in transit. He came over with the merge as well, and he's waiting to one of his last partners who's still on the job to retire, so then he can come on the show. He wants to know, he says, Mike, can you ask him if it's true that the EMRU boss had to call the duty captain to take the MP5 out of the truck?
Oh, John, you should be really familiar with that.
Oh, yes. I know exactly what the rules are for deploying the MP5.
Let me. As John once told me when we were teaching together, when you do something so impressive that they actually write a whole order about it, you've done something interesting. God.
So, if you were deploying the MP5 in the subway, we could take it out and deploy it. If you were taking the MP5 to be deployed out of the subway, off the subway,
out of MTA property.
Off MTA property, you needed the duty chief to authorize the deployment of this magical weapon. So when Ray Cannon got killed in the 6-9 precinct, we responded. A couple of transit rescue units were there, and we were responding from like halfway across Brooklyn. And I asked, can you ascertain from the duty chief, we want to deploy this police officer shot, barricaded perpetrators, blah, 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 blah. Nothing. So we're getting closer and closer and closer. The duty captain says negative. So, well, with all due respect, the order says the duty chief has to either approve or disapprove. Dead silence. So we're on scene. I'm like, well, and let me tell you, it was pandemonium.
You heard shots being fired.
Oh my God! It was
transit. Yeah, it was a gun battle.
It was crazy. Multiple different commands there, multiple different units, and so I deployed the MP5 and almost was suspended for violating.
But now, who was it? Johnny English in 7 truck who said, if you have, break it out?
No, I had already taken it, but the rescue sergeant Bobby Gain ended up saying he authorized. He told me to do it basically, so he took the hit. But that was it. And I remember we got called to the chief of department's office, and he told us, he's like, "This is it. This is your one pass. If that weapon gets deployed again, not following the rules, I'm taking them all back." So
You've been bad. No sleep for you, 2 weeks.
Yeah. So we were all getting suspended. I was getting suspended.
Years of, I think this is a transit rescue cop from Sam Katz's first
Andy,
book on the
Andy Stromfeld.
Really? Okay, this is Andy at the job there where Ray Cannon was killed in December of 1994. And that was, God, 26 years old. He had just gotten married 2 months prior. A very heartbreaking case. One of 2 officers shot and killed that year. The other one was Sean McDonald up in the box. So I'll ask you, because we're at the hour mark, and I guess we can end with this. And Scott says there was a retirement party that night in the 8-4 area. That's why they didn't answer pages. I guess is what Scott's saying. He would know. He was working there at the time. Is that, again, on one hand, like you both talked about when you were on for your solo episodes, it's great. And you ended up having a heck of a run in ESU. You guys ended up working as instructors at STS. John, you had a blast at 7 Truck. Anita, you worked in different trucks and had a blast at all of them. Worked with a lot of great people.
2 was my favorite. And here's a picture. Here's a picture that sums up a wonderful midnight in 2. Next time, I didn't know I could send you pictures.
There's what is happening here? Do I even want to know?
So
here's a taxi cab.
That is a taxi cab that launched into the fountains at Columbus Circle on a midnight. He decided he was going straight.
That's good.
Well, he went straight, all right.
Yeah, and I forget who was there from the news, and I'm like, job well done. Let's get the J-hooks.
This will work. Somebody actually, 2 Truck had a job the other day where somebody, and I should have sent it to you guys, drove their car almost halfway down the entrance to the subway in Upper Manhattan.
I saw the picture in the paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Good move.
Yeah, so they're still getting jobs like that, Listen, I don't think you could park there, ma'am. But that said, it is bittersweet when the merge did come around in April of 1995, because even if there's more opportunities now, and like I said, the run in ESU was terrific for you guys, this is still home, and you'd come to love transit as a whole, but especially those 4 years you both spent in emergency medical rescue. So that day, when on one hand, it's like, yes, we're going in the ESU, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, man, transit's no more. And I'll start with you, John. Tell me about your feelings just on that day.
I miss the people, that I was used to working with, but I was so pumped to be going to the big team, so to speak. I mean, it was a dream come true. I mean, they would just, again, the opportunities were so much bigger because they were so much bigger than we were. Their equipment, I mean, we had to beg, borrow, and steal for everything we got.
Everything we had.
And, you're going to some place where they have an astronomical amount of equipment compared to what we're used to. And but the biggest thing was like their trust of ESU. Like when you went to a scene and you had some time under your belt as an ESU person, the bosses would be like, all right, this is what we got. What do you need? What do you want to do? And they trusted your judgment, where transit
was not.
It was not like that at all. They would tell you, this is what we want done, and this is how we want it done. They wouldn't tell you exactly the equipment and stuff, but they certainly didn't take your input the same way as they did in the city. And that was because of the reputation that ESU had developed over decades.
As a cop going onto a job, the precinct sergeant would just look at you, like that sigh of relief. That ESU is here. You're not a cop. You're just a cop. You're not a boss. You're not a lieutenant. But they knew that we would take care of whatever problem it was, and that was a nice thing. And as John said, the freedom. You got to start to understand when you got to certain jobs. Oh, it's a barricade. All right, the boss is coming citywide. He's coming from a distance. That boss would expect that the door's tied off, that you're either engaged in conversation. Everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, to the point where we're just waiting for him to come to make entry. The door's tied off. We're already stacked. Equipment's out. Everything that we need. That would have never happened in transit. They would have never allowed you to be that independent.
Yeah. It's not an easy job. Even now, I mean, they have their districts, of course, even without certain things that have been happening in the news recently that we don't have to get into. It's just, it's not an easy job. And no matter the patch, my hat's off, because I think, Anita, was it you that were talking about, there was a guy that knew exactly how many ceiling tiles there were as he's walking that beat for 8 hours.
Right. Again, you'll get a station like 2030 lie as a punishment post for a week. There is nothing to do there. So yeah, how many tiles, how many are cracked? Anything to just occupy your time. Okay, I've read the paper, I've done this, I've done that. What's left to do? Let's count tiles. Oh, is that the same rat? I mean, no place to eat there. I mean, it's terrible.
When I took the test and I got notified that I was going to transit, I can't say I was doing cartwheels that I had gotten transit. I didn't know anything I grew up on Long Island. I knew virtually nothing.
Do I dare tell that, John? Do I tell that story, John?
You introduced it, you might as well.
TPF, 7 train, tonsillitis. The guy from Miss Cupcake waving at us at the terminal station.
There was a million different things. I had no idea. People would ask me for directions, and I'd say, I don't know how to get there, but do you know how to get here? Because that's where I'm supposed to be. When we were just out of the academy.
You had gotten tonsillitis, so you missed the whole
That's
2
right.
weeks of training.
That's right.
So he's got no idea about train runs. He's got no idea about anything. And the 7 train's really easy. It starts here, it ends here. It's a 33-minute run. It's 11, 11, 11. But at Times Square, it pulls in. It's a terminal station. The motorman that is now drove the train picks his stuff up, and he walks to the back of the train, which is now the front of the train, because it's going to pull out. So as a cop doing TPF, your next train run is probably on the other side. So we're all waiting, and John is like, why is he still standing there? That train's not going anywhere. This train's on this side. And he's waving at us, and we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Let me tell you, that first month when I came back.
Long month, right, John?
Long month. And they didn't care.
No. So
when I came back from getting my tonsils out, which as an adult, I wouldn't recommend. But anyway, I'm like, I missed field training. And they were like, right, you sure did. I'm like, but I've never ridden in subways. They were like, well, you're going to learn.
Baptism by fire.
They didn't care. They did not care. When they say they didn't care, they didn't care. Here's your train run. Figure it out. Ask somebody else. Get out. And, good luck.
Have fun.
Yeah.
I ended up
don't
collaring in District 4. And I think I had to go to the hospital. I forget I had to go someplace, but the car drops me off. And I call the command, and I'm like, hi, I'm over here. I think I was at Bellevue. I'm like, hey, I'm at Bellevue. Can I get a ride back? They're like, no, figure it out. Okay. All right, District 4 is Union Square. Let me figure out how to get there from 33rd Street. Okay.
Taxi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, close to it.
They were pissed when I was in District 20 that I got involved in something, ended up at Queens General. So they're like, we're not picking you up. Take public transportation. So I'm like, really? I was miles from the closest subway station. Miles. They were like, we don't care. get back here, and you're not getting any overtime. You're not getting anything. We're not sending anybody. Take buses. Good luck. So listen, if I could go back, I wouldn't change things necessarily, because I think that the training that I got in transit in how to talk to people and how to deal with things yourself, to be very self-reliant, definitely helped later on in my career in both EMRU and ESU.
Yep.
You would like Anita had said earlier, you're used to talking to large groups of people, but in transit, your radios could work or they couldn't work, and you would, even if they worked, it was going to be a long time before people got to you in certain stations, just because of the size of the station. So if you started something, good luck.
Good luck. I remember going to, I got a train run. I think I was in District 4 at the time. I got a train run that ended up in District 3. Never been to District 3 in my life. Have no idea the train, have no idea the station. They were pulling a train out of service. There was somebody sleeping on the train. I go to wake him up to get him off the train because the cleaning crew couldn't. The guy wakes up, he takes a swing at me, and now I'm rolling with this guy on the platform. Have no idea where I am. I can't. All right, I'm at this location, and they're like, "What platform you at?" I'm like, I don't know. So you're dealing with it, and that's why you hear the footsteps and you hear the keys. You're like, I'm just going to hold on to you with every breath that I have because I know help's coming. And again, District 3, different world, very different than District 20 that I was assigned to, and District 4. District 3 had a different way of doing things, and I remember the lieutenant that was sitting on the desk. And I mean, I come in, I'm kind of disheveled, and I'm relating the story, and he's an old-time boss. I said, just tried to get him off the train, and I said he woke up, he took a swing at me, and we ended up, he goes, "Wait a minute, he did what?" I said, "He took a swing at me, Lieutenant." I said, "But it's I'm okay." Officer, can you go in the back and research your prisoner? And I was really naive at the time. And then it's like 6 months on. I said, "Lieutenant, I searched my prisoner." He goes, "No, he needs to be searched again." I understood later why he was searched again. He was so informed why he should never, ever swing at a police officer. Ever. Guy came out in tears.
Again, like TPF, the only advice, don't take anybody off the train at a desolate station. Okay, but I don't know any of the stations.
Well, I ended up, for some reason, I ended up in the car one night because I didn't have a partner for whatever reason. The RMP driver was the one that actually said, "Don't ever get off." Was it Hunts Point?
Yeah, Hunts Point was very dead. And the one I took somebody off because I didn't, 52nd and Lincoln on the overnight. There's nobody there. It's nothing.
It's nothing. But I think with Hunts Point, if you waited one more, I think Vernon Jackson, the precinct was right upstairs.
Yeah, the 108 is upstairs.
Yeah, they're like, if don't ever get off here, we'll never find you. Wait one station. So you're underground and you have no idea what's above. And as John said, you had to think on your feet. You had to figure out places to take somebody to. Station open, station closed, closed end, not closed end.
You know what I like at this time of year? You'd be underground and you wouldn't have any idea what was going on upstairs. And you'd go upstairs and there'd be like 4 inches of snow on the ground.
Snow on the ground. Yes.
What is that?
Well, something happened.
Oh, it's going to be a long while.
I enjoyed, again, District 2. I was assigned the one train from 33rd Street to South Ferry. That was my patrol. And when I got that, I loved it when it wasn't that cold out, but it was Christmas, because I used to walk back. I used to go from 33rd Street. I'd do a station inspection. I'd walk 5 blocks. Go to 28th Street. I'd walk 5 blocks, go to 23rd Street. And I'm walking between the stations. I start at 11 o'clock and I'd walk all the way back to District 2. And, I remember one night, it was such a beautiful night, a little bit of snow on the ground, and I'm in uniform and I'm ice skating. It's kind of slippery, and I'm just, so I got a whoop whoop. It's the first precinct. So I go, how you doing? And like the sergeant he was about to rip into me, and then he goes, frickin' transit. Go. Well, close enough. It was always that, transit. No, never mind.
The other police, or as you call it, the irregular police.
The irregular police.
The irregular police.
Billy
Billy Dempsey's watching. Billy Dempsey says hi to both of you.
Oh my God, Billy! What the hell is he doing? I'm actually.
He's watching the Olympics.
I'm looking in my office, and I'm trying to find the bumper sticker for you. I got to take a picture and send it.
Please do, if you can. And Joe Burns also
around,
does.
It's here someplace.
Joe Burns.
That'd be a great bumper sticker.
Bill Dempsey. Dempsey.
Well, I keep poking to come on the show. Come on, Billy. What are you waiting for? I'm trying to get you on. And AP, if you have my number, text me, because I'm thinking, I don't want to say the name on the air, but I think I have an idea as to who you are. But she's asking, Mike, can you ask them both how they felt about the transition to 9mm after Bratton came on, and if they liked the changes he made to transit?
Absolutely.
I liked it.
Absolutely. Are you
27%
kidding me?
crime decline.
We went from having a 6-shot revolver with not even plus P ammo, and when we first came out,
speed loaders.
We had
speed loaders.
We had speed loaders, but when we first came out, we had dump pouches.
Yes.
And so we went from that to you got speed loaders, and then to go to a 9mm, it was great.
Speed loaders came about because of the shooting at the Rockways with Goodell.
Scott Goodell, 86.
Yep.
Yep.
That's when we transitioned.
Poor guy.
The training changed.
And
it was.
And as far as Bratton was just
great.
game changing to the transit police and to the city as a whole. Just
do you remember when he said he realized that he didn't have to ask NYPD's permission, so he calls their commissioner to let him know that we're going to 9s, and the NYPD guy's like, "No, you can't." Bratton's like, "Yeah, I can. I'm not asking. I'm notifying you." And then it was, "Well, then you can't use our range."
Yeah.
That's why we were shooting in Nassau County.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote about that in his book.
Yeah. There was so many things and his ability to remember names was just
unbelievable.
He would meet you, and then he would see you 6 months later, a year later, and he'd remember a conversation that you'd have. He was unbelievable.
Brought us to the 21st century. Between the fax machine, the cars.
Yep.
He gave us a sense of pride that we really didn't have, because we always felt like the redheaded stepchild. We always got everybody's leftovers. We had no budget. It's do more with less, and try not to get hurt. And then he comes along, and we're like, is this guy for real? Even the thing with our uniforms changing, allowing us to go to the dicky pants because of being on the trains.
Oh, the Daryl Summers story you told me.
Yes.
If you don't mind, the audience, for those of you that haven't heard that story, go ahead and tell that story again, Anita. And Billy Dempsey, they are talking about the one truck bumper stickers.
Do you remember when Daryl goes to O'Connor about ironing his shirt, and he ends up burning his shirt? And he's like, well, it's because you don't know how to iron your shirt. And Daryl's like, no, I've been in the military. I know how to iron shirts. But this is no good for us underneath the subway. He goes, it's going to melt on us. But when Bratton realized what we had to do under a train, and realizing, our uniforms would get crapped up so easily, that he's like, whatever you want. The night on the midnight with Richie Locke, when he comes stumbling out of Eileen's, he decides to look at a man under himself. You never heard that story, John?
Yeah, I remember.
Oh wait, is that the one where if you play it backwards?
Nope.
Is that
Nope.
Nope. All right, never mind.
Nope.
We'll leave that one for off the air.
That was the duty inspector. That wasn't the chief of the transit police. See, Mike, one of the big mistakes that I made in my career,
repeatedly,
only detectives didn't wear uniforms. So not bosses, only detectives. So we went to a man under somewhere in the Bronx, and the Bronx, as it turned out, the Bronx duty inspector comes to the scene, and the person's under the train. He goes, "Have you identified them yet?" So I go, "No," because that wasn't usually our thing right away. So I'm like, "No." So I go back under the train, and they had those old Walkmans where you could play tapes and stuff.
Yes.
So I find it. I come back and I go, hey, again, because he's not in uniform. So he comes over and I hand it to him. I go, you should voucher this. And he goes, what? Why would I voucher it? I go, because if you play it backwards, it says, jump under the train, jump under the train, jump under the train, jump under the train. And boom, back under the train I go. So now other EMRU people show up. They're like, who pissed off the duty inspector? I go, can you describe them? So he describes this guy down to his shoelaces. I'm like, oh, man. He goes, man, he is waiting for you for when, like a little kid, I crawled the whole length, all 10 train cars, and climbed out and ran down the stairs and hid in the truck. So, now they finished. They're like, okay, you can turn the power back on. Everybody's off the tracks. And not everybody. Where is he? Oh, Inspector, I was just under there. There's nobody else under the train. Okay. You tell him I remember what he looks like.
So now we're going to fast forward to John and I teaching in STS. And we get a new chief of SOD, CK1. And we all go to meet him. And I say to John, he's in plain clothes. Remember what he looks like. Was it the next weekend you come to me and go, I think I'm getting transferred? Yeah. What'd you do now?
Yeah.
Good old Charlie. We talking about Charlie?
Yeah, the chief and I had a very unique
love-hate relationship.
Good old Charlie. I've reached out to him. Actually, I'm trying to get him to come on the show. Hopefully he does. But he was in housing. I think he was a housing guy before he came over.
Yep.
Yeah, he was chief of housing SOD, then NYPD SOD. Yeah, interesting fella, Mr. Camera.
John had the innate ability to find the highest-ranking person in plain clothes and somehow, like a heat-seeking missile, piss him off. Oh, you remember? I had there was a job in Queens. You were the TAC medic on scene. It was a hostage barricade.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was
the Boulevard.
Yes. Yep. Because I had the observation post. I forget who I was with. I had the ops post. And you stand in one spot, and then you get told to stand someplace else. And then the two detectives came in. I forget what your response was, but they were like, "Yeah, we got to leave."
Yeah. It was that was the K-man was there directing me.
Yes.
It was almost comical after a while. Like I would say, watch, chiefs here, wherever I'm standing isn't going to be the right place to stand. And
I couldn't understand why looking Like, why do you keep moving? Because, like, from my end of it, I'm trying to identify who everybody is. And I'm like, okay, John's by the door. Now he's over here. You know?
It was
Interesting.
I could do a whole show on just my interactions with Chief Gavinata, but
Yes.
but yeah.
But we won't do that now, will we?
No. When I reach out again, I won't mention. Hey, I know John Busching, by the way.
No, you should.
I won't. Or I should.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe you should.
It was crazy. Like, like people would be like, he really likes you. I'm like, really? But do
you remember you set up the scheduling as hard as it was to have all 4 groups do the tactics, hazmat, I think, and something else in the first 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Because he wanted it that way, and then something that they weren't trained for. And he's like, well, who made the schedule up this way? And you were like, well, you told me to.
Oh, yeah. It would be, you're right, Pete. It would be a comedy act. And at least this time I couldn't get like transferred or fired.
No. So. That's a benefit of being retired now. And that's I think there was a story one time when a friend of mine who was in scuba, Oscar Smith, he was doing some training where he was swimming, and a sergeant, I think, was pissed off that he was in the water. It's like, you want me to get him out the water? He's like, no. Chief Gambrinetta says to the sergeant, he's doing what he's supposed to do. He's training. Let him stay. So he was good that way. I don't know how long he had SOD, but he had it for a period there. I think 97. Well, forever.
He was there for a while.
Forever.
It's
normally a stepping stone. Usually the chief is there 2 years because it's a check-off box in order to get your next star.
Anemone. I say that with love.
Nobody wanted him. So he got stuck there.
He
got stuck there. When have you ever heard of people trying to transfer out of specialized units?
Not really.
When guys are trying to transfer out of Harbor.
He was there after 9/11 because Chief Patel was the chief of SOD during 9/11. So he was a great boss. Great.
Do you remember the story I told you on my other episode where I couldn't think of the chief's name when we went to 2 Truck?
This was.
Did I tell you that story?
What?
I'm with Joe Nicolo. We're going to a detail. They just recovered part of Joey Vidge's body.
I don't think you told me this.
Joe Nicolo turns around and says, on me, we're paying our respects we're going to 2 Truck. I'll notify him that we're going to be late, but we're stopping at 2 Truck.